Hello, true duelists. It's YGO Strat's Yu-Gi-Oh! Single Card History, where I'm going to be talking about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and some of the other ones that really did not. Today's card, the tuner of choice for multiple water decks, Deep Sea Diva. Deep Sea Diva was first released in Raging Battle as a rare in 2009, with notable reprints including a super rare print in Turbo Pack Booster 4 in 2010, a peasant rare printing in the Realm of the Sea Emperor structure deck in 2012, an ultra rare print in Duelist Saga in 2017, and a rare print with that fancy gold lettering from Maximum Gold El Dorado in 2021. For time on the ban list, Diva was live on stage at 3 copies from release up until the infamous September 2013 ban list, where it was limited to hit the Mermail Atlantean deck, I guess out of fear of that deck becoming the best one of the format, even though Dragunity rulers would be a thing. Either way, it would stay limited on the list for just over 6 years, before being semi-limited on the January 2020 ban list as a quarantine of sorts, before coming back to the unlimited status on the April 2020 ban list, where as of this video, it has stayed ever since. A level 2 water attribute Sea Serpent type tuner monster with 200 attack and 400 defense, its effect reads: when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one level 3 or lower Sea Serpent monster from your deck. Diva is a fantastic example of 2009 card design, if you ask me. There's no once per turn, and it can summon a copy of itself. Really, it was only waiting to be broken, which took a few years, but it got its time in the spotlight soon enough. It saw play relatively shortly after its release, getting a top 16 at a Shonen Jump Championship in Columbus in 2009 by the one and only Jeff Jones in a zombie deck. Seen here, it was played at 2 copies, presumably because you just wanted to see one in the hand and summon the other one from the deck. Diva can only summon from the deck, so playing 3 meant you were always going to have a dead one if you played all 3. It being a level 2 tuner meant that it was great for generic synchro climbing into a level 8, or for just easy access to level 6s like Goyo or Brionac. It helped fill the spots otherwise filled by the then limited Plague Spreader if you couldn't get access to that tuner right away. The fact it summoned a copy of itself was also great, coupled with plenty of the deck's strategies and gameplay, able to combo off well in turn 2 if you already had set a recruiter like Mystic Tomato or Pyramid Turtle, and it makes an instant level 8 synchro if you had a level 4 already on board, which offered even more potential when taking things like a play like, say, making Brionac and discarding a Mizuki to bounce a card and then use the discarded Mizuki to revive something else and make a second level 6. The deck did see a small amount of play, with 3 other similar deck lists topping Shonen Jump Championships, each still playing 2 copies of Diva and using it for much of the same plays, functioning as Plague Spreaders number 2 and 3 of sorts in its deck. This eventually fell off with further hits to Zombie on the ban list, namely limits to Mizuki and things like Burial from a Different Dimension, so instead Diva's next stint in the meta was in a deck called Diva Hero, where it again was used to summon a copy of itself as a means to make easy synchro plays for 1 or 2 synchro monsters. David Eugen even won first place at a London Regional in 2010 with this build. Seen here opted to play the 3 copies of Diva and a lone spined Gilman to summon off that 3rd Diva. This was a pretty neat take on hero decks, and the deck offered a number of interesting plays, like using Future Fusion to send a Treeborn Frog and Destiny Hero Malicious, setting up for tribute plays or even synchro plays if you opened, say, Diva. Diva's role in the deck was a somewhat multi-purpose one. A copy of Diva in hand and a Malian Grave was any level 8 synchro you felt the desire to make, and its water attribute meant it paired beautifully with Miracle Fusion to summon out Elemental Hero Absolute Zero, a monster who is Regeki if it leaves the field. And if the player opened Evil Hero Infernal Prodigy and Diva, they could even get out Armory Arm as well, which might help on the offensive push to game depending on what else it is they can get out, or even with just another Miracle Fusion in hand. Historically speaking, this deck was never a strong contender in the grand schemes, having only one other top to its name, but as I understand it, this is a pretty popular deck to play in Edison format, as one of the, if not the hero build to play for the most success you can find in said format. The next deck to take Diva in was one that, in my eyes, is its home even to this day, though if you look at my channel's profile pic, you'll know that I'm saying that with some good amount of bias. The Realm of the Sea Emperor structure deck would release in October of 2011, just 1 month before the release of Abyss Rising. Not only would the Atlanteans of the deck function as powerful means of removal and and consistency, but the common reprint of Diva meant it was easily available to get and play. These facts, coupled with Mermail's own consistency and OTK potential, made for a very strong and explosive deck, infamous for its ability to OTK, and one that would go on to win 6 YCSs in its time. No small feat for a deck, and yes, I am a fanboy. Diva's role in Merlantian, as it was known back in the day, was a lot more versatile than it had been in other decks that had been playing Diva, with the Atlanteans all being sea serpents with solid effects. Marksman was a level 3 that, if it inflicted battle damage, could summon an Atlantean from the deck to help push for more damage, and if a player summoned Dragoons off of Marksman, could be used to make a Synchro 9 for Mistworm to bounce everything in the OG days, and Trishula once that card came off the list. Or if you can't quite get in damage yet, Diva and Marksman makes for Catastor, which outs a good number of cards back in 2013. Summoning heavy infantry off of Diva meant that you could get access to, say, an easy armory arm to help push for damage, and if you had opened 2 copies of Diva, thanks to the lack of a once per turn, summoning heavy infantry off of Diva could let you summon an additional Sea Serpent, namely Diva, to get another Sea Serpent out of your deck, meaning your 2 Divas ultimately got you 4 monsters on board. And thanks to the release of Xyz monsters, Diva didn't just enable synchro plays, but instead Xyz plays as well. Gachi Gachi could be used to make a wall of sorts when you were forced to go first, or to summon a Daigusto Phoenix to help push for game when going second. In the early days of the deck, Diva wasn't always played at 3, however, with some players opting to play instead the Genix Undyne package as well, which competed for the normal summon. Still, Diva served its role as the tuner of the deck and was a fantastic card to start the turn, and a solid one to Veiler when the opponent was the one summoning it. This would be Diva's core role in the deck for some time, a tuner for synchro plays when needed, and a means to get Atlanteans on board for either extra deck plays or as tribute fodder for Abyss Megalo to attack twice. Diva was eventually to hit to 1, as with Atlantean Dragoons, at the same time as the Baby Rulers. This was to hit the deck's consistency, especially since Teus Dragoons was the opening play of the deck and kinda is even to this day, so that did hurt. Still, even hindered and limited, Diva would continue to see play in the Merlantian and Mono Mermail and Mermail Atlantean decks, all functionally being the same core strategy of Atlanteans for disruption, Mermails for OTKs, and using a Diva for some consistency and synchro access. The strength of the deck led to it being one of the top contenders at the time in what some players call water-fire format, or fire-water format. Either way, early 2014, before the release of Hands and later Artifacts and the rise of what would be Hat format. It stayed as a viable deck even in Hat format, and it did manage to take a YCS first place in April right before the release of Primal Origin. Ben Sherman's first place at the UK National Championship in 2014 here shows that for all the deck had changed, it had stayed the same. Molten Glacia could be used to take cards out of the opponent's hand, Undyne was still a strong normal summon option, and Lind Float into Megalo was as obnoxious as it had ever been. The rise of Hat as a deck would push Mermails down from the top tables, and the deck would eventually join all of Hat format in irrelevancy, as Duelist Alliance shook this game to its core. But it would see a small reprieve in 2016 with the release of Breakers of Shadow, and more importantly, Neptabyss, the Atlantean Prince, who is canonically besties with Deep Sea Diva and made Undyne completely irrelevant. Fuck you, Undyne, and fuck the Genix controller you made me play. I do not care for Garnets. Neptabyss will send an Atlantean from deck to grave as cost, so even Effect Veiler couldn't fully stop it, and if it wasn't Veilered, it would add an Atlantean from deck to hand, and since you almost always would be sending a copy of Dragoons, it meant that you got 2 cards added to your hand for the cost of, summoning your Neptabyss. Not too bad. Neptabyss single-handedly propelled Mermail back into rogue status in the post-Duelist Alliance meta, which is pretty decent for 1 card, and with Atlantean Dragoons having gone back to 2 in the July 2015 ban list, it was made even better. He became the de facto summon off of Deep Sea Diva, and the otherwise best normal summon in the deck. Going second, opening Neptabyss and any other water monster could reliably put 8200 damage on board by itself, meaning if the opponent's board wasn't strong enough, lethal was very much a tangible threat. For reference, the easy combo is summon Neptabyss and use its effect to send to Dragoons, and then add a copy of any Atlantean card from the deck to your hand, whatever you felt was best. If you wanted an extra search, you could search your second Dragoons, or maybe Marksman or Infantry to help clear the board of any problem cards. Off of the sent Dragoons, to search that original Atlantean there, you could then add Abyss Megalo, and with the searched Atlantean and any other water monster, you had the means to summon out Megalo and search the Abyss scale equip spell of choice, most often Mikazuchi, with the summoned Megalo, you could then tribute Neptabyss to revive a sent Dragoons from the graveyard, and now Megalo can attack twice. By equipping it with your searched out Mikazuchi, you've got a 3200 attack monster that attacks twice for 6400 damage, and Dragoons 1800 gets you up to that coveted 82. Was it always as easy and simple as that? No, but when it was that damn easy. Granted, this was all bolstered by the fact that Gameciel could be a kaiju the deck could play to solve problems and double as a discard of any water for Megalo, and Norden could make Dweller, which, when detaching a Dragoons, would search off of Dragoons. So there were other factors that helped bolster Mermail back from what it had been in 2014, but 99% of its return was to Neptabyss, which, if I haven't made clear, again, was the best thing to summon off of Deep Sea Diva, or certainly it is in this deck. This remains Diva's home for some years, with the deck receiving some minor additions, namely Totally Awesome through Bahamut and even a Frog Engine. The deck was never a top contender at YCSs throughout 2016 and early 2017, but it was a solid choice at regional level events, seeing multiple tops in all sorts of formats right up until Zodiac took the entirety of the meta out back and did away with it. From here, Deep Sea Diva remained the best way to get out Neptabyss, and Mermail decks were the only place that were seeing any sort of success. There was a single Orchist Mermail deck that got third place at a regional in 2019, seen here, but I'm gonna go ahead and call that some Texas shenanigans, because that was what we in the business call a one and done. It was not a repeat success. Diva did briefly see play in a deck not playing Mermail cards competitively though, in Sprite decks. Yes, early Power of the Elements format with the release of Sprite and Tier Elements in 2022, there was a brief moment of debate over which generic level 2 you would like to play to get more generic level 2s on board to make easy Sprite plays. All the Sprite monsters can summon themselves from hand if you control a level or rank 2 monster, and activate their effects if they're special summoned. They also have very good extra deck cards, namely Gigantic Sprite and Sprite Elf, that just need any level 2s, so any of them will do. And that rhymes, so it's true. Early on, and as was sometimes the case in the OCG, Deep Sea Diva would see play as the 2 to summon a 2 of choice, summoning of course another Diva and allowing for your Sprite lines. This would see some play early on, but YGO top decks only has 4 recorded tops playing Diva, as players pretty quickly settled on the Nimble Beaver as the 2 of choice, really for one simple reason. Deep Sea Diva can only summon a Sea Serpent from the deck, while Nimble Beaver summons any Nimble monster from the deck or graveyard. This means that the third copy is never dead, unlike is the case with Diva. You can argue the release of Sprind and the abuse of Nimble Angler also has bolstered the Nimble engine over Diva, but even before the release of Sprind, Beaver was deemed the 2 of choice. Diva did at least offer some Hulk shenanigans in its time, so it did have that going for it, but praise to Xenu, my Mermails are safe, and the Beaver was deemed better. And I, for one, personally agree with that. And that brings us to today, as I make this video, where once again Diva is best known in Mermail builds, and as a lesser Sprite tech. It had to contend with more and more ways to be stopped as the years have gone by, from Valor and Maxx to Ash Blossoms and Imperms. It's become something of a high-risk, high-reward summon, depending on what the rest of your deck and hand are like, but when it resolves, it's been to great effect for the boards it's been able to set up. It's a classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Effect in that it is as solid as it is simple. Overall, Diva has been the water tour guide since even before tour guide was a thing. Being a tuner that summons from the deck, it's been used to make synchro plays, it's been used to make rank 2 plays, and even link plays. It's been one of Mermail's best play starters for what is about to have been a decade, and a strong means to get tuners on board for all sorts of synchro plays. As long as synchro plays are solid, this will remain a solid choice as a somewhat splashable generic tuner of sorts for any deck that wants multiple tuners or even just level 2s, as Sprite has shown us. And if by some chance we do get a really good low-level Sea Serpent themed deck anytime in the future, this thing's getting on the ban list hella quick. And so that's our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, Deep Sea Diva. Stay tuned for our next video and feel free to suggest some cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. Don't forget to like, and as always, subscribe to YGO Strats to impress your smoking Italian wife and so that you too can become a true duelist.